So I'd like to begin by asking our panelists, and we'll probably start with Muneeb, to each of you introduce yourself, tell us briefly about your current role and the organization you're with, and how it all happened, sort of, how did you get from York to where you are now?
Okay, so I work for UNICEF Canada as a community engagement coordinator, and majority of my role essentially is working on community fundraising and events to raise funds, and then also working with youth and youth engagement. Funny thing is, the first campaign I worked on at UNICEF was called Spread the Net, and David used to work on that with us. And before UNICEF Canada, I used to work at TakingITGlobal, where Sara works now. So it's a very small world. I actually don't have a formal training in ID. I work in the sector, but I'm actually a marketer by training. And I work in the sector because the things that I'm interested in and the things I wanted to do pretty much relate to international development. Throughout my, I would say, the 40 hours you have to do in high school to graduate, I worked with individuals with disabilities, and primarily kids with developmental disabilities. And then through that, I actually got exposed to a lot of children's rights concerns, and I was working with an organization called Community Living Ontario. And somehow, from just being a volunteer, I ended up being on their board at the province level. And through that, it just basically grew my interest in it. And while I was graduating from York, with a marketing degree and a public policy degree, I was just like, okay, how do I put all this together to do something in the not-for-profit sector? Because being a marketer, one thing I promised myself was I was trying my best not to sell a shaving cream or chewing gum. I told myself that's something I don't want to do, but I still want to use that skill set, and that's my strength, and that's what I like to do. So I started working at TakingITGlobal as a youth engagement representative, and what I worked on essentially was engaging youth within the city of Toronto, and providing them the training and the tools through social media to basically express themselves and learn more about social causes and how they want to make impact globally, locally, and be it like nationally. And then from then on, I started as an intern at UNICEF, did a 4-month internship. There's no formal internship program. I'll just tell that right now. At UNICEF, there's just that every year there's like 2 or 3 internships they hire for. And I was fortunate enough to then be kept on a contract position for about 6 months. And then from then on, I became permanent. And now I basically manage our UNICEF on Campus program, which basically is about 35 campus clubs across the country that are at universities and high schools and colleges, and then also do basically events of any sort across the country. So it's fun.
Thank you. Sara?
Okay, so hi everybody. My name is Sara Hassan. I'm currently working with TakingITGlobal, much like where Muneeb started, but I'm working in the capacity as a program officer. I'm specifically working with the TakingITGlobal for Educators program, where we empower teachers around the world to integrate global issues in their classroom using technology. And the second part of my role is also coordinating an environmental education program called Deforest Action. So how I got to TakingITGlobal, it's kind of full circle, to be honest. So I am a York grad through the IDS program, and I graduated in 2007. So much like you were speaking to earlier, I was a part of the International Development Studies Student Association when it started up again in about 2004, heavily involved with the program, trying to figure out, well, what do I do with my IDS degree? I've learned all the theory, now how do I put it into practice? So that was my big question when I was kind of figuring out what to do. During my undergrad, I tried to really connect with the IDS community at York to network, to learn about opportunities, to also do awareness-raising events on campus to really kind of channel what I'm learning in class into something more tangible on campus. As well, during my undergrad, as with every ID student, we're craving that field experience, getting into the field, learning kind of the issues on the ground. So I did a 2-month volunteer placement with Youth Challenge International in Guyana during the summer of my 3rd year, which was pivotal for me going into my 4th year and really informed kind of the learning that I was doing during my 4th year IDS classes. So when I graduated in 2007, I was wondering, now what's next? Do I go to the UN? That was something that I was thinking of, always thinking about. Do I work locally? But my heart was really into going back into the field. So I actively looked for an overseas placement and was lucky enough to get a placement through one of the CETA internships with an organization called Prospective Global in Honduras. There I was working in the capacity of HIV/AIDS education, working with youth on the ground to help them develop an HIV/AIDS curriculum and help to support them to teach that curriculum in their communities. So it was a fantastic experience. I was there for a year and then thinking, well, I need to go back to school. So I then came back to Canada and I did my master's in globalization studies at McMaster. But one thing that really kind of drove me to do that master's was during my time in Honduras, I really found what I was passionate about, which was education. So during my master's, I focused my, my studies on global citizenship education. How do we educate youth in Canada about these types of issues and how to take action on them and kind of the theory and pedagogy around that. So upon finishing there, I actually went to do an internship with TakingITGlobal, specifically with the TakingITGlobal for Educators program, because that's what they do. And TIG does actually have a formal internship program now, so I will put that out there. We have 3 cycles a year. So I was with the first cohort of interns that started at TIG in January 2010. So I did a 4-month internship as a program assistant, and it completely opened my eyes to the world of possibilities in global education. But at the time when I was working through my internship, I still had a little bit of an inkling of maybe I just want one more field experience to know that, you know, this is the right program I want to be in, this is the area I want to be working in. So I applied for an internship with the Aga Khan Foundation, who also has an internship program for youth looking for opportunities in development. And I was selected as an Aga Khan intern and was sent to Zanzibar, Tanzania for a year. So there I was working in early childhood education and got really hands-on experience on kind of the intricacies of implementing education at the local level. And then I was trying to think about how I could bring back those insights into work that I would want to do living and kind of settling back into Canada. So lo and behold, through my internship at TakingITGlobal, I was able to secure a full-time position, which is where I am now. So I've taken the insights that I've drawn from the 2 overseas placements I've had, and I'm really working at it now to help teachers around the world incorporate that into the teaching they're doing with their students on global issues. So that's where I am now, and yeah, excited to be here.
Thank you, Sara. David?
So it's always very difficult to know where to start when giving one's kind of history and trying to connect the dots and looking for those threads from one's past and so on. But my background academically is in philosophy. I have an undergraduate specialized honors degree from York, and then I went on to do a master's degree in philosophy at the University of Guelph. But in between that time, there was about a 10-year period, and it was a really interesting period for me, and I'll try to connect a few of those dots for you. First of all, thank you for inviting me. I always have incredibly fond recollections as I drive back onto the campus here at York. I've been in this room many times for different functions. I still have many friends who have attended York, who still teach at York, and were professors many years ago who have retired. So it's indeed a pleasure for me to be here. My path to international affairs, international development is a pretty, I think, eclectic one, if that's possible for a path to be eclectic. I started in construction many years ago. I worked for 18 years for the same company, for 12 years in rough construction as an electrician, and went on to do relationship management work with the Royal Bank of Canada for about 6 years, working with the same company. That was about an 18-year period. And during that period, I was doing my undergraduate degree here part-time, and so I would put in a 10-hour, 8-hour, 10-hour day. I would drive up here before they had all these wonderful parking garages, and I would change in the car and feel like a little bit of a lunatic, and then walk to a 7 o'clock class for a 3-hour lecture and drive home energized like you wouldn't believe. And with no one to talk about. This was pre-cell phone, so of course you couldn't call your friend just to chat about what you just dialogued about in class or what it was that was driving you forward even farther. So for me, philosophy was a first thing. So for me, too, I believe in international development. I believe the question, you know, like Neo's Trinity says in The Matrix, I believe the question drives us. And so I believe the question drives me as a philosopher, but more importantly now it drives me as an international development worker. And so a good needs assessment, a good results-based management log frame, a good narrative description of any project that you're about to do, a good monitoring and evaluation report is going to have to be based on asking the right questions. And so I would encourage you all to continue to do that. And I think you're all here today, I would imagine, because you have some relevant questions that you'd like to see addressed. And so for me, that's really been the thread. Is it as a philosopher? Yes. Is that as a construction worker? Yes. And it's also now as a development worker over the past 10 or 12 years. I also now am teaching at Humber College. I was going into a PhD program, or at least so I thought. And I was hoping to get into the University of Warwick to study continental philosophy. I was going to read Heidegger and Nietzsche and Simone de Beauvoir and write weird and wonderful things that no one would ever read. And I was reading also at the time Shake Hands with the Devil by Romeo Dallaire and Race Against Time by Stephen Lewis. And I decided that I didn't know who these two people really were. And I decided that as the president of the Philosophy Graduate Students Association at the time at Guelph, believe me, it sounds more lofty than it really was. We held a library book sale once a year and raised a few $100s. I took it up a notch, and so what we did is we brought Stephen Lewis in to speak at the University of Guelph. And I didn't really know who Stephen was at the time. I've worked with him 3 times since. He's a wonderful man. I've read Race Against Time. I highly recommend it. The night of the event, somebody came around. We had sold 48 tickets 2 days out, and we had over 700 seats to sell. This was an expensive event. Somebody was going to be in trouble. And so somebody came to me and said, "You've got to come and see the lineup out front." And I figured 50, 60 people, and I opened the door, and there was over, we figure, a rough guesstimate, between 400 and 600 people lined up to come in to hear Stephen Lewis speak on where in the world is the world headed. And this was just one more dot that was connected based on a few questions that I had asked previously. And so it drove me that much farther forward into what the next step was, and that was applying for postgraduate work in international development. And that was at Humber College, and thankfully, as a result of getting to know a few of the people there, doing well, having a love and a passion for the field itself and for the people involved in it, I decided to see if I could teach there, and have been teaching there in the program now for about 6 years. I teach a course called Issues in International Development, and I also teach in their International Development Institute. I teach a course called Issues and Tools in International Development as well, and have a wonderful time working with younger people and digging deeper into the issues, and again, being driven by hopefully substantive, meaningful questions. So again, lots more there, but that's I hope a short and fairly precise history to provide a little bit of context for you as we move forward. And thanks again for coming. I appreciate your time.
And if I could ask the panelists, we've been asked to, if the panelists could speak directly into the microphone and bring the microphones a little closer to you. Okay. So Larissa?
All right. How does that sound? Yeah, we're good? All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Larissa Strong. I work here at York University, and as I said, I will soon be a graduate, not soon enough, of a master's program here. I'm dragging it out for an extra year to do some hardcore research. So as a potential graduate, I'm very happy to be in the company of graduates, and which you will be as well. One of the portfolios I have in my role in the Office of the Associate Vice President International, York International, is running the York International Internship Program. Has anybody heard of it? A couple people. And we have a couple of past participants. Nice. Hi, everybody. Who's that? Oh, hi. So if you saw those hands that went up and you've applied, you might want to chat with them during the networking session to see what their experience was. I think it was positive for everyone. For those, I've been around and I've told my story a couple of times at York, so if you've heard it before, feel free to glaze over. I did my undergrad at Queen's University, had no idea what I was doing. Just everybody said, oh, you have to go to university. So, okay, I'll go to university. And upon completing my fancy degree at Queen's University, I was a really smart bartender. But that was about the extent of what I was able to do.
Should be on our business card.
So I heard about this opportunity through Canadian Crossroads International to go down to Costa Rica, and Latin America was always a bit of a passion of mine. So I said, well, let's do that. And it was it was basically a voluntourism. I can't even say it was an internship. I went down and lived with the family in rural Costa Rica, and on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, I walked up the volcano and taught English. So I'm not a teacher. I don't know how to teach English, but I was like, oh, I can speak English, so obviously I could teach it. And something I called development skills. So it was things like, this is how you brush your teeth. And or after a big rainstorm, we'd go out and we'd fix the road. So we showed community participation. And then Tuesdays, Thursdays, walked down the volcano and did the same thing at another school. Did that for about 4 months, didn't feel like coming home, so headed to the beach and worked under the table at a hotel. The important part out of this was in a year of living in Costa Rica, I picked up Spanish. And I think that's probably one of the hugest assets that I have is the capacity to work and think in a second language. And it's something that I would strongly recommend to anybody. You can do it formally by taking it in classes, what have you, or you can go to Costa Rica and find an Eduardo who's a whitewater rafting instructor, and he'll help you learn very quickly. One's a little bit more fun than the other. But yeah, having a second language is something that when I'm looking at applications from interns, is something that I definitely look closely at. I know how hard it was for me to learn another language. So I know if anybody else speaks another language, their brain's working at a higher capacity. And so that says to me, let's put them in the consideration pile, even if nothing else is very strong in their application. So think about another language. So I came back from Costa Rica after a year. I was, how long can I continue being a beach bum? And went back to bartending. Quick money, so easy money. Knew I didn't want to do that for the rest of my life. And so I found out about this new program at Humber College called International Project Management. And so in the second year of the program, picked up and moved to Toronto, took the program. My plan was, finish school and go work in a refugee camp. That was the plan. What actually happened was I got hired for a job, not an internship, in Welland, Ontario. Anybody from Welland? Okay, I'll tell the story. If you want to know where Welland is, you follow Lake Ontario until you get to the armpit. That's where Welland is, because it is resembling of an armpit. But so I was working in Welland at Niagara College in their international department as a student advisor. It wasn't exactly development work, but it was paid work. And through that, I was able to start working with their development wing. And for a year before I started at York, I was managing 2 projects in South Africa and one that we were starting in Sri Lanka. And it was fascinating, it was thrilling, and I was on the road for 6 months out of a year. And it was fantastic, and it laid the groundwork for me getting a better job working at York University with all of you. I'm going to give a couple of things that I learned along my way, a couple of ideas that I think are important for people to consider, because I hear it continuing. I meet with students all throughout the year, which is the best part of the job. But a lot of people have that idea that I'm going to graduate with my undergraduate degree and I'm going to start working in an NGO. Did that happen for anybody? Yeah, but you did a bunch of internships in there.
But I had the thought.
But you had the thought.
Yeah, I had the thought.
And that's a very common thought. If you look at how many NGOs are in Toronto and how many people are in the room, there's probably not enough jobs for everybody. So something to think critically about. I love the idea that people believe they will finish school, start working, work 40 hours a week, and earn enough money to pay off their debt, buy a car, buy a house. No?
It's not true. I thought that.
Yeah.
How long are your weeks typically?
More than 40 hours.
Do you work Saturdays and Sundays?
Depending on the week.
Yeah. And do you get paid overtime?
No.
And have you paid off your school debt?
Yes.
Oh, good girl.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
My work week can can be anything from 40 hours to 80 hours a week.
Yeah.
Like, I do a lot of response work and fundraising for emergencies, so when Haiti earthquake happened, I was working 17-hour days for 6 months.
Yeah. David, weekends?
Up until about 8 months ago, I was probably doing 70 hours a week, yeah. But I've had a bit of what I would call an epiphantic moment. So I have decided that in order for me, the runway for me is getting a little shorter probably than it is for most of you in the room. And so I'm trying to manage my time and my expectations a little more. But yeah, it's the unfortunate, I think it's a great question. And the unfortunate thing about this field is there's no shortage of opportunities and there are no shortage of need. But unfortunately, the burnout level, the divorce rate, these things are very high in this field. And I think going in, it's really helpful to know that, so that you can, so that, not that you're following in that path, that's not what I mean at all, not in a negative, pejorative way, but that you can be aware of it and that you can hopefully prepare yourself for kind of what's next. But it's a really important thing to think about. And the idea, this idea of entitlement of any kind, shape, or form, you really should toss out of the window right now, because 70 hours raising funds is hard, rigorous, demanding work. It really is. So, yeah.
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 Yeah, no, I think that's very fair. I mean, the last time I worked, I'd love to know the last time I worked a 40-hour week. I don't think I've ever worked a 40-hour week in my life. But the nice thing is, as you get older, is your body just starts telling you, nope, we're not working 80 hours anymore.
I've also discovered 16-year-old Scotch, so that's had a whole. It's kind of had it's had an impact, yeah, on my 70-hour work week.
I think that's probably a good segue into my next question is what can students and new graduates who are interested and passionate about international development work and want to get into this field, what can they expect in terms of the opportunities that exist upon graduation? So are you going to be doing field work right away, or are you going to be answering the phones in some office? Like, what can they expect? And in terms of how much output, effort, and what's a typical work week like? What's a typical day like? Muneeb, would you like to start?
My typical day depends on what's happening around me. So, for example, yesterday my typical day was, because I'm launching a campaign next week called the Student Challenge, which you all got their brochures for. Yesterday was pretty much dealing with websites, dealing with vendors, making sure everything is printed on time, and it's pretty much a lot of administrative marketing work, because a lot of my job is marketing. But at the same time, I also work on international travel for youth through the campaign. So I will also be working with last year the trip vendors went to Panama. This year the trip vendors are the challenge winners are going to New York. So a lot of work I also do is around that and engagement. But beyond that, it literally varies a lot. So because I wear 3 different hats, I can be doing 3 different things. And my work week typically is about 10 hours a day. I am on the phone a lot, and a lot of times it's basically managing relationships. A lot of times it's basically managing relationships that have gone rogue, that you're trying to mend. And as a student, I would definitely recommend that before you guys graduate. How many of you guys are graduating in April? So now would be a good time for you guys to actually start looking for jobs. Because if not looking for jobs, at least start looking into what is it that you were interested in doing. So I was fortunate enough that I got the guidance while I was in school, and I pretty much narrowed down to say, okay, because I do want to work in a for-profit sector, and when you work in that, it's very much driven from your belief system. And my thing was, I want to work with children's rights, children, education, and healthcare. And when you think of those things, then you can actually start narrowing it down into what kind of work it is that you would like to do. And there's a lot of opportunities out there. But it's a thing that you need to put in a lot of time to it. So I had a ritual that in my last 1 year, that every 2 weeks I would just research on a new organization, and just learn about them, and just learn about what kind of opportunities they had and what kind of things they did. And that's pretty much how I came to know about TakingITGlobal. And when I realized what kind of work they were doing, I basically called them up and said, I know you're doing awesome work. Can I just come in and learn what you're doing and how you're doing it? And it was basically an informational interview, but I walked out of that interview with a job, surprisingly. And so it's just, you really need to put yourself out there, but you also need to be realistic that when people say that you will apply for 100 jobs and get maybe 10 interviews and have one job out of it, it's actually true. It truly, like, you need to be mentally prepared for that. But don't lose sight of what you want to do, because that's what very important.
Thank you, Muneeb. Sara?
Great. So I guess my typical day, my day changes every day. So working at TakingITGlobal, we're a young organization, and we're constantly, continually evolving with new ideas. So we'll start with an idea in the morning and have something completely different by the afternoon. My current day, I'm working on this campaign called Deforest Action. So it's connecting youth in schools around the world, raising awareness on the issue of deforestation and helping them find ways to take action. This project is currently centered in Asia Pacific, so we're working with a network of schools there. So my days sometimes start at 4 in the morning to accommodate calls with teachers or do a webinar with students. Because a lot of our work is online and we're leveraging social networking and social tech and technology as a way to connect people around the world. I'm on the computer a lot, but what's really great is I'm connecting with people from around the world all the time, whether it's on discussion boards or whether I'm just emailing a colleague in England or a colleague in Australia. It's that kind of connection that I'm having in my day-to-day. Our days run about 8 to 10 hours as well, depending on the nature of the day. But it's a fantastic place to work, just in terms of the motivation, the enthusiasm, and also because it's a youth-run organization, youth-led organization. We're full of energy. We're full of passion. Everyone's there because they're excited about the work we're doing and are really passionate about a cause. And echoing what Muneeb said, definitely one of the things that I've learned through my journey is really being passionate about an area within the spectrum of development that you really care about and you really feel that you can apply yourself to. That was something for me that came actually later on. When I started with international development, I actually fell into it. My big goal was to work for a multinational like Nestle or GlaxoSmithKline. Like, I was focused on international business when I came. I applied to Schulich. I was, pulling out the stops. So my first year I was actually a marketing major, and I took a class called Third World and International Development as an elective, and it completely blew my mind. I was very shocked by a lot of international issues that I just didn't seem to be aware of, and kind of shocked by the fact that I was learning about them in university and not, earlier on in my educational career. So when I switched to international development, I was very much focused on, well, I'm going to go towards the policy end, but I wasn't really sure in which area I wanted to be working in. There's health, there's education, there's sanitation, there's so many different areas. It was only once I graduated that I found that I'm really passionate about education. So I definitely encourage that, and I really encourage you to get involved on campus to help discover what you're passionate about. What was great about going to York was there a multitude of clubs, a multitude of opportunities to be able to explore what I like. And that's where I got involved with Model UN. I was involved with International Development Association. So I do encourage that into helping you find your passion and what you feel you'll be great at. Upon graduating, just like everybody else, I was applying for jobs left, right, and center. And one thing that I do encourage is do get field experience, even if it is in a small capacity, because being able to relate to what's happening on the ground and then applying that to your work here in Canada is really helpful and really beneficial, just for your own personal growth, but also for your professional career, bringing those insights in to make sure the work you're doing here is relevant. And it's so I would definitely encourage, upon graduating, look for opportunities to go overseas, and don't be afraid to volunteer. That's one thing I know. What's really hard is finding a paid internship, but don't be afraid to fundraise and actually raise the funds to be able to go somewhere and make an internship for yourself as well. It's that kind of ingenuity, that kind of creativity, and that kind of drive that will really make an experience for you, and in the long run too, help you be noticed by an organization who will then maybe bring you on afterwards. It's something that I've seen my colleagues do as well. So definitely I encourage field experience. There's lots of opportunities out there. There's the International Youth Internship Program through CETA. There's the Aga Khan Foundation has internships as well. There's lots of volunteer placements through organizations like Youth Challenge International. I really encouraged doing that and having those travels and being able to connect with that. So once you do come back to Canada, and the situation that I was in as well, where do I apply? What jobs do I look for now that I'm back? It really helped narrow my focus and help me find what I was passionate about.
Thank you, Sarah. David?
So just to clarify, the question was, what's my typical day? Is that?
Well, it was sort of a twofold question.
Pretty much
Okay.
First
taken
of all,
to
Yeah.
a level. Like,
based on your experience,
Yes.
what can students and new grads expect when they graduate? Like what would their work day look like?
Right.
And then what is your work day
Right,
like?
right. So there is no such thing as a typical workday, as far as I'm concerned, but there are extraordinary workdays. And I don't know if that makes any sense at all, but I find this work to be incredibly invigorating, but also incredibly discouraging at the same time. And it's a constant struggle for me to balance the two. 4 steps forward, 10 steps back. 3 steps forward, 7 steps back. A donor drops off, a program doesn't come to be, a Skype connection is lost,
Yeah.
your 4 o'clock in the morning call now has to be pushed for another week.
Yeah.
And it's a constant series of challenges that you are overcoming, which on one level is a really exciting thing, because we're all problem solvers on some level. But it's also incredibly discouraging when you start to see how slow some of the change is that's occurring, not only in our own communities, but around the world. And so SoChange is something that I started coming out of my Humber postgraduate work, SoChange.ca, by the way, for those of you who are interested in it. And it's a capacity building organization, and I can use that and move on in this room knowing that you all know what that means. But I'm here to tell you very few people know what it means to actually build robust, substantive, meaningful on-the-ground capacity. And I've been stunned by that. And so what we are doing is coming alongside nonprofits, but also now coming alongside corporations. And what we're doing is we're creating integrated social change campaigns. And we're trying to say, we can write proposals and we can design projects. And we've worked in Rwanda and Mongolia, and Cambodia is my favorite place in the world, by the way, if any of you care. Had a huge impact on my life for so many reasons. And so what we're trying to do is trying to make sense of it all. And so SoChange, out of social change, the Center for Social Change is what really is where I started with the name, and then it just became kind of social change, and why not just SoChange? Because there's kind of a couple edges to that. There's SoChange, but SoChange, right? There's a couple meanings there. And SoChange, damn it, actually, is probably what I'd really like to say. Why aren't you getting engaged? Why aren't you involved? And so our job, and this is where I get incredibly excited, is to, again, plant those seeds of change. Our line is, we help you flap your wings. And based on a philosophical principle of chaos theory, one little butterfly can make all the difference in the world. And I truly believe that. And I truly believe that about each and every one here in this room. You are going to make all the difference in the world, but you don't have to go to the UN. You really don't. You don't even have to go to York University, right? You're already doing it. The question is how and how much, and how do you leverage that and build? And so my days are really not typical at all, and I think you should be prepared for that. And one of the things that any intern that I've worked with has been astounded by is a job description. Yeah, but David, this is what I was hired to do.
That's what you do.
But, okay, great, but now you're on the ground, and this is what they actually need.
Yeah.
Because maybe a tsunami hit, or an earthquake in Haiti, and maybe not even something as extreme as that. Maybe somebody just died or left, or they actually really didn't have the capacity in the first place for this job, and they were trying to pull you in, and they just wanted your expertise. And you get there, and all of a sudden you're showing a marketing skill as well? Are you kidding me? Well, we're going to use that as well, right? And so your level of expectation, start to try to manage that already if you can. So it might be here, keep it here. Please, for the love of all things holy, keep your idealism and your expectations here. That's the only way we're all going to make a difference in this world. But manage your discouragement and the challenges that you're going to face each and every day. But like I said before, that's for me, and I think for most of us here, what kind of makes it exciting. And I think something I also want to pick up on what Larissa said is that, you know, she saw a couple faces back there, and this is why she's here. It's the students. And to say that it's all about relationships is so cliche, and it's so trite. But you know what? When you shake somebody's hand, from this day forward, make it mean something. When you look at somebody in the eye, make it mean something. They're not just a means to an end. This is what you're getting into the field for, is the other side of the world, is the other side of the community, is the other in its purely human and existential form. You're here to build capacity in one way or another, right? And that's exciting. But like I say, we're dealing with human beings. We're dealing with a very globally challenged world in so many levels that make the work that we do incredibly difficult. And it can be difficult 7/24. So I hope that's helpful as far as a typical day is concerned, and as far as I think I've already spoken to it, but as far as your day is concerned, expect the unexpected, you know, again, to kind of be a little cliche. Getting on the ground, getting field experience, I think is probably the best advice that you're going to get here today, and that can be field anywhere. The world's a big field. And I think at York, you guys have an incredible series of opportunities, and I think Diane could speak to this at great length. I love York. I loved York. I did my undergrad over a 10-year period. I took 2 credits a year. Some people would call that self-flagellation. But 10 years, I worked full-time while I did it. Best time of my life. The relationships that I made, the conversations that I had in Very Hall, and the list goes on. Leverage that. You've got this community. There's 100 people in this room. What are you guys doing to connect? Are you guys members of Take, as it's now referred to?
TakingITGlobal, yeah.
So to be hip, by the way, you got to call it Take. So, you know, are you members of this community already? Have any of you volunteered for the water campaign that UNICEF is rolling out? I can't think of a better way to get a foot in the door with UNICEF down the road than coming to them and say, we as a group here at York University raised $5,000 for the new student challenge. So you're going to have to get creative. And you probably didn't want to hear that, but you really are going to have to get creative about what's next. And pick up the phone and shake hands and knock on doors and do things that are indeed unexpected. So if you just send out all these resumes and wait for everyone to come to you, you're going to be sorely disappointed. But if you start to take things a little bit more seriously and notch it up just a little bit from a creative perspective, how can I get in the door? I think you're going to start to feel not only empowered, because now you're really, you know, getting involved. You're going to find something. It's going to not take you quite as long to find a role in this field, because the reality is, as I said before, the needs are great. And I better shut up right now, or I'll just keep going.
Thank you, David. Larissa?
There were so many good points made, and as I was nodding my head, yeah, okay, that was yeah. You're so right with the resume point, that just sending out blanket resumes, especially if your cover letters are all the same. No. You know, where you just change it to dear organization, but it's clear. As somebody who reads about 1,000 applications a year, it's very evident when you're using a standardized cover letter. Don't do it, because in my mind, if you can't put the effort into writing me a letter, I can't put the effort into reading it. So might as well just leave it blank.
It's pretty funny, a blank cover letter.
Yeah, dear whatever, ... So being creative, I think, is a great way of approaching it. And when I was at Humber, I was doing all kinds of weird stuff. To start creating those networks. You know, I did the census, so I got to know everybody in my neighborhood. Good idea. I was volunteering at Oxfam about fair trade bananas coming out of the West Indies. You know, but it was something. I was out there. I was connecting. I was talking to people. I was getting an idea of how these organizations work. and so I encourage you to do the same. Don't look at volunteering as a way to put something else down on your resume. I remember I looked at an application where the guy had like 30 clubs that he belonged to. And I said, what do you do at any one of those clubs? Tell me one thing you've done. And he's like, well, I go to the meetings. You know, look at this as your opportunity to actually start building that skill set that's going to get you the job. So is it fundraising? Is it working on their social media campaign? Those are the kind of things that you can do through volunteering, and finding those areas that do spark your interest, that you want to pursue further in your career. We had a running joke in the Humber program. Whenever anybody asked us what we wanted to do in development, we didn't know what the answer was. We go, community development or capacity building, you know, because we're like, we don't know what those things mean either. So we'll just say, you know, it sounds good. So yeah, get out there, start connecting with those organizations. They are low funded and need help. So, but don't walk in and say, I can do anything. Walk in and say, your Facebook page needs some work, you know, and I can do that for you. That sense of optimism, I think, and it's true. I can hear it in the three of you, and I think I've got it in myself, and I check it all the time. My boss at Niagara College, who worked for Doctors Without Borders for many, many years, and so he was, you know, he had the Nobel Peace Prize, you know, so he might know something about something. He said the moment that you get jaded and you lose that sense of optimism, get out. Yeah. So keep that in mind when you're doing international development, because that jadedness is going to be exactly what prevents you from reaching your goals. Working with people in developing countries, you have to recognize the privilege that comes with it, and the vulnerability of the people that you're working with. And the moment that jadedness starts to come in, it alters that relationship. And that relationship is an important thing to manage. It is a relationship. I got caught once in South Africa, you know, saying, well, the project this and the project that and the project this. And my co-coordinator says to me, Larissa, it's our lives. It's not a project. Mm-hmm. And I kind of went, oh, okay. Lesson learned. It, you know, stops you dead in your track. And those are those kind of lessons that I hope I can share with you, because it'll take you that much further than where I was. To think about my average day when I was working at Niagara College, it could be anything from doing my log frame and results-based management, figuring out the difference between an output and an outcome, or working on the budget, or booking a flight, or organizing a pre-departure orientation. So the really dry, sitting at your desk in front of a computer with the phone to your ear stuff. But then there was those moments of brilliance where we were working with a group of youth who were connected through an HIV/AIDS clinic in East London, South Africa, and they were using drama as a way of addressing the issues of gender in the transmission and treatment of HIV/AIDS. And they put on a show. They showed me it, and it was like interactive drama, and they showed it to me. And all of a sudden I had this realization, oh my God, we're actually doing something here. Something's happening here. Or the personal time for me when we were working with Walter Sisulu University, and they needed somebody to do the commencement address at one of the graduation ceremonies. So they're like, hey, get the Mzungu, you know, yeah. the white girl, get the white girl. And so all of a sudden, I'm standing in front of 1,000 people delivering a commencement address at Walter Sisulu University. I mean, it's awesome, but it's a moment I'll never forget. Would I have had that opportunity any other time? No. Will I ever have that opportunity? No. You know, it's thanks to the lack of organization and typical of South Africa, I got to do something like that. But those are the reasons why you keep going, because, I mean, it's once in a lifetime. So optimism, volunteering. Where do you find out about these opportunities? If you haven't liked the York International Internship Program Facebook page yet, you really should. Anybody who has liked it will know how regularly it's updated and opportunities are put through, so definitely take a look for that on Facebook. All right, that's what I got to say.
So I think the common thread that I hear is start with yourself. You know, clarify what it is that you want, what it is that you're passionate about, what it is that you're good at, and then go from there. Decide, okay, well, if I've got a passion or an interest or skills in a certain area, then I need to start looking for opportunities or organizations that can make use of those skills or that interest or that passion. And then start talking to people. Right? So don't just think sort of outside of the job search box. And so if you're looking for opportunities in international development online, you're probably not going to find them many there, if any. Talk to people, go approach them directly, like Muneeb was saying. Call them up, go on, use social media, join clubs, join community groups, that kind of thing, and get experience, build your skills, ask questions, do your research, and that's how you're going to find out about opportunities. Okay. So I think at this point, we will open the discussion to questions from the floor. If anybody has a question, if you could raise your hand, and I'll, when I select you, if you could stand up and nice and loud, and I will repeat the question for everyone to hear. And we are taping the session, so if you're not interested in being taped, then have a seat, and you can talk to the panelists later on. Okay. Does anybody have a question? Yes. Could you stand up?
Thank you. What I wanted to ask is, I appreciate your advice on going somewhere, say for an internship and volunteering, but also my concern comes in where, say, somebody is a mature student, coming to you want to do a degree program, and somebody is an immigrant, and there are a lot of things that come with that, a lot of responsibilities. You have to work, you have to feed the family. At the same time, you're trying to take a degree to improve things and get a job. So you are not going to be privy to going away for an internship for 3 months because you have rent to pay and things to do. And at times you can hardly even spare like maybe a day to volunteer because at times you have to juggle between maybe 2 jobs and going to university. So I don't know what kind of advice you can give to somebody in that kind of situation.
I think that's a great question. So I'll repeat it for our takers and for the students at the back. So the question was, realistically, if you can't afford to take off to another country or to volunteer for a few months, and you've got bills to pay and student loans and all these financial obligations and other things, how can you still make a difference and get involved in international development work? Would anybody like to address that?
I can. So the fact that maybe someone is an immigrant or comes from that background, I'll just speak to it because I happen to be live the same thing. I don't have professional training in ID, or I don't have field experience. But I have lived, before living in Canada, I've lived in 5 countries, and I've been to 7 different schools. And so it was just I don't have that, but I had the life learnings from it, which I could definitely apply in the work I do. So for example, if someone talks about a project in Pakistan or is doing something in Pakistan, because that's my birthplace, I can automatically connect the dots, and there's about 25 things that I can add value to that somebody else who has maybe done ID from here probably could not. So just looking within yourself and seeing what is it that makes you unique, and in terms of your life learning too. And yes, we do not have the opportunity to maybe go abroad and volunteering, but even just doing something within the community, and it doesn't have to be a volunteering where you're actually physically going somewhere else too. TIG actually provides amazing opportunities for cyber volunteering. Okay. And I would actually let you speak to that, and I'll be quiet.
Yeah, so that was actually something I was going to suggest as well, is that not all volunteering has to be present too. It could be online, and that is equally as contributing towards creating knowledge, to sharing information. So at TakingITGlobal, we do have a lot of opportunities for online volunteering, whether it's doing research and providing content for moderating our site, or whether it's translations. If you have language skills that you can contribute, these are so valuable, and also then add to that skill set too, and can fit it within a very heavy schedule. As well, there's I actually did do online volunteering for Canadian Crossroads International for their G20 campaign that was happening in Toronto 2 years ago, and it was a research capacity, so just researching on HIV/AIDS issues globally and trying to put it into simple language for their social media sites. So it's these kinds of opportunities, and these you can find online through research, through social media networks of these types of opportunities as well. And they are resume building, they are skill building, and they do contribute towards social change in a different way. So that is definitely a really good piece of advice.
Another question? Thanks for sharing your lives with us. I was just wondering, right now I'm in the process of whether deciding if I want to apply for a master's, if I want to apply for a certificate or a diploma, and maybe some people are thinking along the same lines. So based on the job descriptions that I've seen, a lot of them are setting up what their requirements are, what they're looking for in their job, part of the job description. So what are some of the things that you would suggest for someone who's thinking about getting more experience, either in the academic field, or is it better to do a master's, is it better to do like a co-op, or what should you be doing? Okay, so the question's about professional development and further education and continuing education. Is it helpful, is it worthwhile, should you, and if so, what should you be getting? A master's, a certificate, internship, co-op?
I think I would want to ask you another question. So I'll respond by asking a question, which is often just a rhetorical way of not responding to your question, just so you know. But really, this is a question I hope that will enable you to dig a little deeper. What is it that you're hoping for? And have you created your own log frame? Does everybody know what a log frame is? Nobody knows what a log frame is? All right, I'll have to discuss that with the administration later. But anyway, that's another conversation. A log frame is a 2 or 3 page document that lays out where a particular proposal / project / program will head. And a government, bilateral, multilateral donor will look at this and say in 3 pages, it's a chart essentially, here's what's going to happen, here's what they're going to do, all their activities, and over here is an impact statement. And you've reduced a $200,000 project or a $20 million project to what's called an ultimate today. It'll change tomorrow, but it's called an ultimate outcome statement. And so you might want to look into that, a log frame matrix. You don't need to do anything quite as robust for your own life, but my point is that you should be asking some other questions. Where do you really want to go? Could you afford to take a couple of years off and maybe do an internship with one of these great organizations here and spend 2 years in another part of the world that you wanted to see anyway and get a sense for what's next? Because one of the most interesting stories I've got as a teacher, as an instructor at Humber, is a young woman coming in at the beginning of the program saying to me, I have no idea why I'm even here. I have this sense, this intuitive sense that I want to get involved and that I want to make a difference. And she's now working on a law degree in human rights. That just sends a shiver up my spine. But you may not know that right now. So Oscar Wilde said it's experience that is the name we give to our mistakes, right? So you're going to have to take some risks. You're going to have to make a few mistakes in order to get to that place that you're maybe not even sure you're going to wind up in yet. So I guess my challenge to you is to maybe dig a little bit deeper within your own community, your friends and your family and so on. And if you can afford, I think experience is really coming out here at the table at the panel today. I think if you can afford to financially and time-wise get a couple years on the ground, that would be my personal recommendation. And then if you're really energized about taking it to the next level academically, come back and do a master's degree and move on from there. That would be my sense.
Just to add to it a bit, also like based on the whole log frame theory, that just if I can make it simpler for you guys, it's also just think about what's your 5-year plan and what's your 10-year plan. If your plan is, and being working for 4 years, I still look back at my 1 year, 5 year, and 10 years every year, and I look at it to saying, okay, am I heading in the right path, or what has changed in my life, and how should I reevaluate those? And if your 5-year plan, for example, is to work in the UN, for example, at a very minimum, you need to have a master's, right? So that may be the thing you want to do. But if your 5-year plan is, for example, is to be working in a refugee camp, somewhere abroad, then maybe that's something you have to look back into and see whether if that knowledge will come to you through training or through actually like applying it and practical skills. When I look for interns every year, we hire twice a year, I try and look for a balance, and it's having the actual skill set to be able to do a job in Canada, which is doing a job in Canada is very different to doing a job even in the US, be it in another part of the world, for the skill set, and then also having the broader understanding of what things are and how things are around you.
I'll speak a little bit to that as well, because that's the exact same dilemma I was in about 3 years ago as well, is to know, you know, do you go out and find different types of field experience, or do you go straight to grad school right from undergrad? It's the constant dilemma that we're all dealing with. And one thing, in just looking back, is I would definitely encourage take at least 2 years to get experience. What that experience looks like varies. It could be working locally here, it could be working overseas, it could be doing a co-op, it could be a multitude of things. But I would definitely suggest that, because while, you know, higher level jobs do require a master's degree, having that experience will also inform what you want to do in grad school. And that's something that, you know, looking back now, I would definitely suggest doing grad school a little bit later than right after undergrad. Or even taking, I would say about 2 years is definitely helpful. And it is a bit of a balance. Like, you do want to have, you know, there's some things that the academics can accelerate that training, the skill sets. For example, the Humber program I'm very familiar with can help you gain all those practical skills that you need to work realistically on a development project overseas, or you can gain that through a longer period of time through actually going and experiencing that as well. But I do encourage the experience, and that's what's really helped me to understand where I want to go and where I want to be. And you know, we do have our 5-year plans, but they're also constantly evolving. So I, to be honest, didn't know where I wanted to be when I finished my undergrad. It was very scary. I was applying, thinking about, do I just apply to school and, you know, hold back and just figure it out afterwards, or do I apply for internships? Do I look locally for a job first? At the same time, you know, looking back, because I was able to find what I really wanted to do later on, looking back, I wish I'd found that sooner. Kind of, what am I really, really passionate about? What issue strikes me? What do I feel I can contribute towards? And that helped narrow it for me as well. And then really apply and focus on the areas that I wanted to work in, organizations I wanted to work with, and the like. So I would definitely encourage experience.
Yeah, I'll just chirp in to agree completely and wholeheartedly with that. Doing my master's as I wouldn't even call it a mature, I'm just an old student. I have a completely different learning experience than students who've come directly out of their undergraduate degree and gone straight into the master's. And it is so much more meaningful to me. I understand the content because I have something to root it in. So I strongly, strongly encourage not going straight out of the undergrad and into graduate work. What's the other point that we were making? About the internships?
Oh, finding something you're passionate about.
The path, yeah, the 5-year goals. Everybody always, that used to be part of my professional development, what's your 5-year goal? I still don't have a 5-year goal. I've never have. And it's just a different path. It's a different way of doing it. I just fell from opportunity to opportunity because I opened myself up to them. So, you know, going from bartending to Costa Rica to Humber College to Niagara to, you know, which included all kinds of travel, and then to York. If you had asked me 15 years ago or more, when I finished my undergraduate, would you be working at York University? And no, no, I would not be working. So, but I had no idea. So that is just a different path that is being open to opportunities and making the most out of them. So, you know, Costa Rica, my father said, what are you doing going to Costa Rica? It's just a waste of time. And my mother said, if you don't go to Costa Rica, you'll be a bartender for the rest of your life. She was right. And what did I get out of Costa Rica? Great tan, lots of friends, and Spanish. So, and international experience. It's just that international experience of living away from home, having to figure things out.
You got to meet Eduardo as well.
Wow. Oh, he had a mustache. When we're hiring people to go out and do international opportunities, we want to know that the time, the effort, the money that we're investing in you is not going to be wasted, so that when we throw you into the deep end, you're going to be able to swim, not sink. How do we know that? Your experience. And so these internships, particularly something like the York International Internship, which is a one-of-a-kind program in Canada. Nowhere else at a Canadian university will you find somebody who will hire a third-year undergraduate student and pay them to go work with some fairly prestigious organizations, from Canadian Embassy in Spain to Maddox Jolie Pitt Foundation in Cambodia. Oh yes,
Wow.
Red and Ange.
Wow.
Yeah.
Very neat.
So you know, taking advantage of those opportunities. Cheyenne's killing himself. He's like, oh, she's trotting that one out again. Eh? All right.
Thank you very much. So I think this is sort of a nice time to put a plug in for the Career Center. If any of you have a question about what can I do with my degree in international development studies or whatever you're majoring in, the Career Center can be a source for support. We have counselors who provide, who can help support you in exploring your career options and supporting you in researching those options. And then if you know exactly what you want, let's say you decide, I want to work for the UN, and that's fine. And you've got a 5-year goal plan to work for the UN, we can support you in getting from where you are now to where you ultimately want to go. Okay. So I do encourage you, if you haven't made use of the Career Center services, come by the Career Center. We're in 202 McLaughlin. Okay. Any other questions from the floor? Yes. The lady in the hat? Yes.
I know you guys talk a lot about internships. What are some specific skills that you would look for in an applicant? I know language was one of them, and also experience, but what else could you say about what differentiates people from each other?
Okay, so the question is about skill sets that are valuable for international development work.
I'll start. So a lot of the interns that we hire every year are basically around campaigns. So we hire interns over the summer for our national UNICEF Day campaign, which is basically the orange box that used to be there. But now we don't have the orange box anymore, and it's a more robust program. And then also our student challenge campaign. And for both of them, we look for having an undergraduate degree, and B, the skill set that essentially is there is to be able to build relationships. As although as cliched as that sounds, but a lot of the work you're doing is actually managing people. And a lot of the work you're doing is actually going out and promoting the campaign to people and actually convincing others that the global issues that you're passionate about and the international development issues that you're passionate about, why others should be concerned about them, or why others should actually join you in being involved with them. So the ability to be able to go up to someone and start a conversation in a very respectful manner is very important. I'll just do a quick story if you guys don't mind. There's this one, when the Haiti earthquake happened, there was a lady with a master's degree who was doing something in international development in a master's. And she was pretty convinced that she had a rebuilding plan for Haiti, for the whole country after the earthquake. And she was pretty concerned with the way UN and UNICEF was handling things, and wanted to come in and do a 10-minute presentation to change the work UNICEF was doing in the country. She believed that, and it was perfectly fine, but I think the way she was going towards it and through it was something that we did not, or anyone would not appreciate, because you are telling an organization with a 55 years experience that what you're doing is wrong. So yes, even if you do have the abilities, be polite and be nice about it. A lot of times when we are trying to do networking or we're trying to build relationships, we sometimes get very strong. So just keep that to you. And beyond that is just like regular professional skills. So like, if I put you in front of a donor, or if I put you in front of someone, would you be able to represent the organization? Can you use Word? Can you use Excel? It's just those simple things that we do use every day, but can you do it professionally or not? Because at the end of the day, we all work on computers, right? Whatever we do, we all work on computers. Sometimes we have had interns that have come in and said, I do not know how to send emails. And if you do that, that's just not the way we should be working with you.
So I'll speak a little bit to what we're looking for at Taking It Global for interns. A lot of what we look in our interns are looking for people who've taken initiative in their previous experience. It could be initiative in any capacity, but someone who's a go-getter, someone who can take the smallest of opportunities and look for something within it. So taking that kind of initiative in your previous experience is very favorable, especially for an organization like Taking It Global, where every day we're coming up with new ideas that then develop into $50,000 projects that we're applying for. So it's that kind of initiative we definitely look for. We also look for creativity. We look for people who can, something will go wrong, they can be creative and really find a way to change that situation. Someone who has a very can-do attitude, who doesn't matter what roadblocks you're faced with, you will persevere and try to find a way to work through it. It's that kind of drive that really pushes forward a lot of the work that we're doing, and those are the kinds of minds that we're all working with. So that's something definitely we look for. So, you know, one thing that really helped when I was doing my internship with Taking It Global was speaking to a lot of the experiences I had on campus. Especially with organizations like the IDA, organizations like Model UN, where you do have an opportunity to kind of shape the way the organization runs, shape the initiatives that you're doing, create awareness campaigns, fundraising campaigns on campus where you have to basically figure out what you need to do. Those opportunities were really very big skill building opportunities, and also really helped for the organization I was applying to. And so I would definitely leverage those kinds of opportunities while you're still here, if you're in second and third year, even if you're in fourth year, if you even have a little bit of time left, because I know fourth year is chaotic. I would use those opportunities because they really do help when you apply outside for internships, because you can speak to relevant experiences and skills that you've built. So I would definitely encourage creativity, initiative, and just kind of persevering, just not saying no to anything. And I know we did speak a little bit here about you know, sometimes getting jaded in the field of international development, feeling, you know, powerless, feeling that, you know, the problems of this world are that so big that who are you that is one person to make a difference. There are times, and I've had it too, where I'm like, I don't even know if the work I'm doing is making a difference. Is it meaningful? Is it more self-serving? At the same time, it's, you know, still keeping that optimism, but leveling your expectations. I think that's really important, and that will really show in any cover letter or resume that you have, any interview that you go to, is that being really optimistic and saying, you know what, even if it's like the most mundane of tasks, even if it's just sending an email, I know at the end of the day it'll have some kind of change, and having that kind of attitude is really helpful. And organizations really do like to see that. So that's what I would say for us.
Sorry, can I just add one more thing too? It's like, even if you do have passion for something, what have you done? If you can actually demonstrate it. So let's say if you were passionate about water, what have you done with any other organization, and what do you have to show for it? And if you actually profile that in your application, that really helps. Because if you're going through 400 resumes, it's really important. Yeah.
So I'm going to speak to once the resume has been accepted. So once you've gone through the resume process, or the phone call process, or you've even been bolder and you've actually gone and knocked on the door, or you've sent the person who's doing the hiring a dozen roses with your picture and your phone number on the back of it, or you've done something really interesting and creative like that to get their attention, which, believe me, would get their attention. Not sure it would get an interview, but it would at least get their attention.
Or a date.
Or maybe yeah. I'm going to learn more about Eduardo after the panel. So, but once you're in the door, from my perspective, in some respects, I actually don't care what you've done. But what I do care is that you have an understanding of the issues.
Yeah.
And that you can speak to them in a relevant and meaningful and accessible way. And that you break down what Breck called the fourth wall in theater. And that you relate to me as a human being. And that you have a firm handshake. And that you can tell a good joke. And that you're willing to laugh, all the while taking every single one of these issues very, very seriously. And you know about global water issues, and you know about malaria. Now that doesn't mean I'm not trying to intimidate, oh gee, I gotta know everything about everything. No, that's not what I mean at all. I mean that you're talking about these issues in a meaningful and a passionate and an engaged way. And believe me, people who have been in the field for a long period of time can tell the difference. If you're selling the car, or if you're actually selling yourself. And in a way that's going to benefit the organization. So yes, get the volunteer experience, run the fundraisers, become a member of the club and so on. But as an old magician said many, many years ago, when somebody asked him about his success as a young performer, he said, well, I learned how to use a spoon and fork. So in other words, very simply, he learned how to engage with other people in a meaningful way. How many of you, and I don't have enough business cards to pass out today, but how many of you are going to come and ask for my business card today? How many of you would have done that had I not asked you the question? Excellent. I have 79 students right now, and I will be bringing in a couple of guest speakers very soon to speak to them. And I am willing to tell you, stats tell me after 8 years of teaching, 1, maybe 2 students will leave the room when the guest speaker walks out and go and introduce themselves and say, hi, I'm so-and-so, can I have your card? Can I buy you a coffee? Can I take you out for lunch? I would love to talk to you more about your education initiative. I don't know what it means yet, but would you give me 15 minutes of your time? You know what? You're on your way to getting a job with that organization, as far as no matter what kind of experience you have. It's about that relationship building. Again, it really sounds kind of trite and cliche and so on, but it really, really does come down to that. So I really encourage you to do it. And the way you're going to do that is online, and you're going to do it face-to-face, and you're going to start your own club. And just a couple things. The Ontario Council for International Cooperation, the OCIC, you should all know about. The Centre for Social Innovation on Spadina, you should all know about. The networking nights that Humber College puts on, you should all know about. The communication initiative, TAKE, the DevEx listserv, the UN listserv. These are all things that will not only continue to develop your own vocabulary within the field, but will also provide you opportunities to get more creative and to engage in other communities. So it's something that I actually get really passionate about, is just learning how to, learning how to relate. Mm-hmm. It's a huge part of this field.
Yeah.
Did you want to add something?
Yeah, I'll just quickly add a little bit more to that. That networking part of it is crucial, particularly in this field. Like even just when we sat down, David's talking, and he's like, "Oh, who do you work with at UNICEF?" And I work with. Oh yeah, I know. And it's totally that. I got an email today. Oh yeah, remember when we met when you were working with this organization? And blah. So it's a small world. People know each other. And so that a little bit incestuous, but and that idea of networking, people think to themselves, I don't know how to network. Do you have a network? I don't have a network. Can I borrow your network? It's relax. It's just a fancy term for being able to walk up to somebody and start a conversation. Exactly right. What I'm going to do when I get back to my office is take the 3 business cards that I got today, I put them into my database, and I got them there. So I can now say, I know a guy that works at UNICEF. And come December, you're going to get a very nice greeting from me wishing you all the best for the holidays. And that's paying into my network. And then I'll be able to reap the dividends, because 2 years down the road, you're going to remember my name. Oh, that girl Larissa with the Eduardo and the, so she's okay. So let's talk to her. And so paying into that network so that you can reap the dividends. I think the original question is, what are you looking for when you're hiring? Yeah. When I do hiring for the internship program and for our office as well, and I will sit with the job description in one hand and your resume in the other, and I look for the connections. People don't know what to put into their resume, and or in their cover letter, and they'll tell me all about themselves, but there's no connection back to what they're applying for. So make those connections. Make it easy for me when I'm sitting, in my pajamas, going through hundreds of applications. Make it easy for me to see you working in that job. And that difference between saying you have a skill and demonstrating you have a skill is huge. Saying I am passionate about refugee issues, that's great. Saying I'm passionate about refugee issues, which is why I've been working at the Center for Tortured People and Refugees in Toronto. I've been doing fundraising for them, as well as doing some monitoring of whatever. That's the difference. That saying I'm really interested in, showing it, huge difference. It's clearly visible in your applications and in your interviews. It goes from being a good interview to getting the job interview.